This is Rick Malone for the San Francisco Symphony. Johann Sebastian Bach used the term orchestra on exactly one occasion that we know of, when he applied for the title of composer to the court of Friedrich August II, Elector of Saxony in 1733. He included a letter in which he pledged tireless zeal in the composition of music for the church as well as for the orchestra, end quote. It is possible that he was using the term to refer to the section in a theater that we still refer to today as the orchestra, but we don't know for sure. The fact is that the concept of an orchestra as a large group of musicians playing together was just beginning to take shape in Bach's time. Bach's friend Georg Philipp Telemann was one of the first to use the word orchestra as a term for a full ensemble of singers and instrumentalists who came together to perform ceremonial works. But concertos, sinfonias, and suites for groups of instrumentalists were very popular in Bach's day. Telemann himself wrote over 200, and among Bach's other distinguished contemporaries, Johann Friedrich Fasch penned about 100, and Christoph Graupner produced at least 40. Bach was a very busy man, fulfilling his weekly duties as music director for the court at Cöthen and then the city of Leipzig, so we have no idea how many suites he might actually have written, but the sad truth is that only 4 survive. The suite number 2 is a dazzling showpiece for flute soloist, and the suite number 3 includes the famous air on the G string. But all 4 are made up of lively and memorable dances in the French style, which was all the rage at courts throughout Europe. Bach also followed the French style by calling his suites overture, which can be confusing today since these overtures all began with an overture. The structure of these suites had actually been established in the late 17th century by French composers who would assemble instrumental movements from their stage works into standalone suites. The French overture that usually begins these suites has a 2-part structure with a stately and ceremonious opening and a quicker main section, sometimes concluding with a return to the opening music. The suite then proceeds through a variety of pieces inspired by French court dances, which were collectively referred to as galanterie. Courants, sarabands, minuets, bourrées, gavottes, gigues, and passe-pieds were all standard and familiar to audiences across the continent. Suites like these were very popular as entertainment music as well, particularly in those German courts which were modeled after the French, and many of them were actually collected or published under the name Tafelmusik, or table music, which underscores the role they sometimes played at formal banquets. Bach's 4 orchestral suites probably date from his years as music director of the city of Leipzig in the late 1720s. At the time, he was also director of the city's Collegium Musicum, which was essentially a weekly jam session in which professional and amateur musicians would gather at Zimmermann's coffee house to read through new music for fun as a break from their professional duties. Some of the music in Bach's suites dates back as much as a decade earlier, but Bach was a very resourceful composer. He knew a good tune when he wrote it and would often rework older material to fit new circumstances. The 4th orchestral suite has a very opulent orchestration, even for Bach, with 3 trumpets and timpani joining the standard 3 oboes, strings, and continuo, and the strings occasionally split into opposing forces. This may have to do with the fact that Bach also used the opening overture in his cantata number 110, which he wrote for Christmas Day in 1725. The very ceremonious overture opens with oboes and strings winding around each other. With punctuation from the trumpets and timpani adding to the pomp and circumstance. The faster section breaks from a 4 square meter into triple time in a rollicking gigue. Bach develops the counterpoint through several episodes and then returns to the music from the grand opening. The piece follows established form by repeating the stately opening the first time through. Now Bach does the same with the second part of the piece, which means restating the entire gigue fugue and the grand closing music. A series of stylized courtly dances follows the overture: 2 bourrées, a gavotte, and a pair of minuets. A bourrée is a quick double-time dance, and the 2 here alternate as part of a single movement. The first one leaps around cheerfully, while the second is more mysterious. With the tune in the oboes underscored by short, swirling figures in the strings. Afterwards, the first bourrée returns. Next is a formal and 4 square gavotte. Then a pair of triple-time minuets, which also alternate, mirroring the bourrées. The trumpets and timpani sit out this section, so it has a much lighter texture of woodwind strings in continuo for minuet 1 and just strings in continuo for minuet 2. The concluding movement is called Réjouissance, or rejoicing, and it's not strictly speaking a courtly dance, although it is certainly dance-like. It's a fitting ending to a suite which combines rhythmic complexity with sonic brilliance. During his time in Leipzig, Bach wrote several hundred cantatas for Sunday services, as well as his great Passion settings, which would seem like an entire career for most composers. But somehow, he found time to write music for his own enjoyment, and for his friends in the Collegium, with his 4 orchestral suites proving that even when you're Johann Sebastian Bach, everyone should have the chance to dance. This is Rick Malone for the San Francisco Symphony.